Well, welcome to another episode of JC Unplugged, and I'm really excited about this episode and some backstory on this episode. Earlier in the week, I spent some time with our guest, Amber Colbert, with the Clark County Museum, and the reason we spent some time together is because, and we'll break this all down in the episode, but Howard Hughes, at one point throughout his illustrious career, once owned Channel 8, I believe from 1968 until 1976, and actually lived behind the Channel 8 studios back in 1953, and his house still stands behind our television station today, and it's absolutely wild. The cool thing is, right now, we're getting in the process of moving that house from the back of the Channel 8 studios to the Clark County Museum, and the official fundraising efforts to cover the move are underway. And so we had a big ballyhoo on Wednesday surrounding the announcement of the house being moved and the history of Howard Hughes, and that's why we spent some time together, Amber and I. So I figured, let's get Amber on the show and really take a deep dive into the life of Howard Hughes, and also the house that is literally 50 yards behind me right now. So Amber, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, JC. I'm excited to tell the community a little bit about this wonderful opportunity we have to preserve some of our history.
Yeah, well, let's start with Howard Hughes himself. We know him as this billionaire, and he's buying hotels, casinos, Summerlin before it was Summerlin. How did Howard Hughes get all of his money?
So he actually got all of his money. A lot of it was inherited, but he was also very smart with his money, and he wanted to control it from day one. So when his parents passed away, he was young. He was a teenager, but he still wanted to be involved in the family business, which his dad's family business was in the oil industry. He comes from Texas, and his dad was really smart about how he did the oil business. He actually leased it rather than changing ownerships and selling things. He came up with a leasing system, which continued to make him more money than other people. He also was an innovator. He invented a special drill bit to help drill for oil. And then again, he leased the rights to people using that drill bit rather than outright selling it, which continued that money flow, which Howard Hughes Jr. eventually ended up inheriting.
Then what brings him to Las Vegas in 1953, and what attracts him to that house? It was behind the television station because the television station wasn't built there with it, which I learned the TV station was a little bit further away. But what drew Howard Hughes to that house?
Well, it actually went back even further. Howard Hughes had been visiting Nevada for quite some time. I mean, even back in the 1930s, there was a woman of interest for him who was married. And our laws are that you have to be a resident of Nevada for 6 weeks and you can get a quickie divorce. So him and this woman actually came to Nevada. There's different stories about where they stayed. It could have been Tule Springs Divorce Ranch. There's some people that say it was just a shack behind someone's house that they stayed in, so that they could get the residency for 6 weeks and she could get a divorce from her husband. Turns out state of Nevada didn't recognize wherever they were as a residence, so they did not qualify for the quickie divorce. And Howard Hughes actually ended up paying her soon-to-be ex-husband to finalize that divorce so that he could date her. And that was kind of one of his first dips into Nevada history. But it continued not just here, but even his marriage to Jean Peters was in Tonopah, Nevada. That's where he got married.
Okay.
So he was always really interested in Nevada. He came out here to test aviation, but then 1952 hits and he's looking at stepping away from Los Angeles because Hollywood was getting a little too much for him. And he was looking at business perspectives, and he negotiated with the federal government to get 30,000 acres of land out on the west part of Las Vegas in exchange for some land across Nevada that he gave the federal government back. And his plan was eventually to open a military aviation plant out there. And it was all the buzz in 1952. So, of course, if you're going to be doing business out here, you're going to need somewhere to stay. Along comes the little greenhouse, which was built by two local Las Vegas men that were trying to come up with a model home kind of a development that didn't really take off. And Howard Hughes purchased the home and then set up shop for about 8 weeks. And we don't know if he had slept in it, lived in it, or used it as an office. Most eyewitness accounts of aides that have gone into the house when he was there said it was set up more like an office. But again, Howard Hughes was an odd man. He was very secretive.
Yeah.
Even in the day, you can find, RJ articles of he's here, but we don't know what he's doing.
You mentioned a couple of things to unpack here. You mentioned, well, I do want to go back one quick thing. You mentioned they weren't sure if he stayed at Tully Springs Divorce Camp. Was that actually a divorce camp back in the
Yeah.
50s that people would just come and stay here to get divorced?
Yeah. So not only are we the marriage capital of the world, but Nevada is also known for having kind of loose regulations on divorce. You only have to be here for a short amount of time, 6 weeks. And if you're a resident, you can get a divorce with no contention from the other party involved. So it was a thing. They set up ranches where people would come to get divorced, whether their significant other wanted the divorce or not. They stayed here for 6 weeks on the ranch. They got to, enjoy the best offerings of Nevada and Las Vegas and get their divorce and maybe meet their second spouse.
Yeah, I had no idea it was
Yeah.
Tully Springs Divorce Camp was out here or resort
Yeah.
was here at one point. And that's wild. And
Yeah.
then you mentioned that the 30,000 acres that he purchased on the west side of town. We now know that as Summerlin. If he didn't die in 1976, or maybe kind of have those reclusive ways, do you think he would have developed his vision eventually out there on the west side of town?
I don't think he would have done it as real estate, honestly. That's my personal opinion. He did have plans for it to be a plant, and kind of operate as a plant. Unfortunately, he couldn't get permitting to do it, kind of delayed it. And then he saw other opportunities open up, like the purchasing of the Desert Inn was the first big mega, resort kind of area he bought, and kind of realized this is an opportunity for me, A, to hide some money because he didn't want to pay taxes in California.
Okay.
Um, and B, there's this whole small town that's accessible to LA and it's accessible to Hollywood where my business is. But I can also make some money here because I can start buying up some of this real estate. Tourism starting to become a really big thing.
And then Summerlin the area is named after his grandmother?
Yeah, his maternal grandmother's maiden name was Summerlin.
Okay.
And of course, he didn't decide on that name. It was his heirs and the corporation after he had
Yes.
passed. They had decided to honor his family by naming it Summerlin.
So he comes out here in 1953 and working here at Channel 8 since 2017. I hear so many stories that he lived in that home, that's where his mistresses, his ladies would stay. There's panic buttons inside the house. But after hanging out with you, he wasn't there for that long. But what I did learn is when he moved out, he had the house sealed up. Why did he have the house sealed up?
That's a good question. And I don't know if we'll ever know the answer to it. Howard Hughes did, though, like from experience, you can see through his whole life, he wanted control over everything that he saw. And he had certain ways he wanted things done. And of course, being a germaphobe, I'm sure he wanted to keep people out of areas he might use. So of course, he'd have it sealed up and no one step inside because he didn't want their germs in his house. He didn't want them messing with his things. And he was kind of a control freak. So one of those things that he probably wanted to control was where he was doing business. You can even look at the Desert Inn and how he controlled that room itself. I mean, he wanted specific coverings on the windows. Only certain people were allowed in. And that was his history was entirely that, even into teenagehood. And some people say he got that from his mother. His mother was kind of a germaphobe and kind of controlling over what happened to him as well. So his whole life was like that. And it caused him problems in businesses as well because he wanted things done his way and his way only, whether it was logical or made sense to other people, it didn't always meet.
But he didn't own the house. He leased the house. Did he eventually end up buying the greenhouse at some point?
Yeah, so if you look at the county records of he did lease it, and then Howard Hughes Tool Company ended up purchasing it a few years after it was sealed. And then of course he had the purchase of KLIS and it was moved over to the grounds. So now you have one single property that he owned.
So what I learned, when you see the picture, there's nothing around the house when he moves in 1953. The Channel 8 studios that we know it today were actually closer to Las Vegas Boulevard. Were we actually on the Strip when we first opened up or started?
Not on the Strip. There was one property in between it and then the Strip, I believe.
So he buys Channel 8 back in 1968. Is Howard the one that moves Channel 8 further back off of the Strip?
That is something I need to dive more into. It's kind of fuzzy history, and that's the fun thing about Howard Hughes. There's lots of fuzzy history.
Yeah.
He was secretive. He wanted things to be secretive, and people didn't think things were important. They don't always write them down. So we're all looking at perspective and how people are looking back at their perspective of things. And I haven't really seen a clear cut, like this is when the Channel 8 moved and this is when Howard Hughes purchased it. I mean, the purchase is there, but when it actually moved, I've had a hard time actually finding like primary source records of like this is when it moved over. But there is a great satellite image. If you go to vintagevegas.com, he's got a great satellite image of KLAS in its original location with the house as well, and the Balihari, which was one of the hotels that was located next to it.
Which is now gone,
Mhm.
destroyed. And
Yeah.
you can see still the foundation if you go into our parking lot. And I never knew what that was. You just see like a random concrete, which used to be a hotel back in the 50s and 60s. And then also behind the Howard Hughes house, there's almost bathroom tile in the middle of the
Mhm.
parking lot. And those were bungalows that were part of the house, or there's separate bungalows?
Yeah, it was part of the house. It was part of that development that they were doing. It was gonna be kind of an apartment bungalow, development, and they were hoping, I believe, to sell more houses like the Hughes house, but didn't quite take off like
No.
of.
And I think so many of us thought that he owned Channel 8 and then that he had the house back there and just walk to the studios, and that's not the case.
'Cause it would make sense, right?
It would make absolute sense.
House.
Is the urban legend true that he bought Channel 8 because he wanted to play movies when at his leisure?
I don't know if that's true. I think we can say it was true. He used to call Channel 8 and say, "Hey, can you roll that back because I missed part of it." But was that his intent when he bought Channel 8? We can't really say. He was a businessman. He was trying to own the town essentially. And if you want to own the town, if you own a television station, you kind of got some power there. So it wasn't not typical for places, businessmen to buy as much as they could. Plus, you think about who he bought it from. It was from Hank Greenspun, and they had a relationship throughout history of buying things from each other and selling things to each other and working well together, not working well together. So it was a business deal that can make sense without the fun story, but the story makes it really interesting.
That makes it very interesting. Do we
Yeah.
know if Howard Hughes spent any time here? I mean, this is an addition that came after Howard Hughes passed
Mhm.
away
Mhm.
behind me. But do we know if Howard Hughes? I just think it's a trip that I work for the television station that Howard Hughes once owned. Do you think he roamed the halls, or was he hands on at Channel 8 coming into the building at all?
I don't personally think so, but again, he was secretive. So if he did, we probably would never have any signs of it. If you talk to Bob Sodal from KLAS, he says that, when he was walking the halls at one point, he thought he had seen Howard Hughes walk past him. And I mean, who knows? I mean, that's the whole thing about perspective. People can have eyewitness accounts. They can make them up. They could think it was somebody and it wasn't somebody. The whole lure of Hughes is there's no photographs of him here. He used this as a hiding place, and he was good at hiding here. So he could have been walking the halls and no one knew who he was, checking up on things because he was a micromanager.
Yeah, seriously. So 1976,
Uh-huh.
he passes away. The house behind us had been sealed since 1954 when he left and sealed the house. What happens then? Howard Hughes passes away. What happens to the house behind us?
So the house behind gets unsealed because, of course, everyone's looking for that elusive will. And since he had been there for some time and spent some time, they thought, well, maybe let's go through all of his properties, scale them up and down. So they did open the house, and from accounts from Bob Stoddall, who was here at the station at the time, said that there was still like bread in the cabinets. There was still tons of clothes, suits in the closet. But if you ask one of Hughes' aides, they said there wasn't that. It was kind of set up like a hotel. It had hotel towels in it and, not that much in it. But what was said by Bob, and probably is true, Summa Corp came in and they took all those belongings out as much as they could. They could clear it out. And this wasn't just this house. Most of Howard Hughes' properties where Howard Hughes stayed, they would do that. They'd go and clean out basically all evidence of Hughes. And of course, they were looking for that will was the big thing. So they did get a metal detector. They went across the whole foundation to look to see, is there a hidden safe somewhere in this house? And they did find a piece of metal on the ground. So they jackhammered it out and they found a little container, of course, no will inside of it. But imagine how exciting that must have
Yeah.
been.
Yeah, we see the photos we have inside the house right now. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Amber Colbert. She's with the Clark County Museum. We're kind of taking a deep dive on the life of Howard Hughes, the Howard Hughes house, which is behind the Channel 8 studios, and soon will be moved to the Clark County Museum. I have more questions I want to get into about Howard Hughes and his time here at the house, but I also want to talk about what's happening to the house in the future of the home. Because I think this is so neat. This is something a lot of us that work here at Channel 8 take for granted, that we have this house behind us and we get to check it out and learn the history of it. And now, soon enough, all of Las Vegas will get to experience the house. But how do you move a house? How's this all going to work?
Yeah, it's baffling to me as well. So I got the phone call 2 days into being the administrator of Clark County Museum. So I was here for a while, but we haven't moved a structure since 2007. So I wasn't here. None of my staff was here. Even if you go to the county facilities, there's only a few people that were part of that move that were still here. So getting that call, it's like, first, is this something we can do? Is this movable? So luckily in the world, there are these companies that's what they do. They move structures. So one of the first things we did is we contacted one that's based in Northern Nevada and had them come out and do a route investigation. Is this able to do? And he said it is able to do. It's going to be a little difficult. And then we decided, it's worth diving a little deeper into. So our nonprofit that supports us, which is actually doing this fundraising, the Clark County Museum Guild, funded a feasibility study. And this study included drawing up plans of the house, looking at, is there hazmat materials in this house going back to 1951. Of course, they use a lot more different materials in our.
Yeah, true. I didn't think of that. Great.
So we investigated kind of the whole, is this possible? Is it worth it? Will it survive a move? Because that's important. The worst thing that can happen is we go to move it and it crumbles to the ground, right? So we paid one of the foremost historical preservation engineers in the nation. He's responsible for helping moving the La Concha here in Las Vegas, and across the world has done preservation projects. And he came in, did the study, said this is feasible. We're going to have to investigate really into how we're going to do it, but it is feasible. We're probably going to cut it up into two pieces. The garage will probably be cut off and moved as one piece and the house as another. It's a cinder block house, which makes it really heavy.
Yeah.
And really fragile, because those cinder blocks, once they start moving independently of each other, they could start to fall apart. So they are going to have to cross brace all the walls on the interior. And then on the outside, they're going to actually encapsulate it with plywood and probably wrap cables around it. And then, like all the houses that have moved here, they have to dig underneath and lift it from underneath.
Mm-hmm.
The foundation the footings will actually have steel beams going through them every 36 inches. There's going to be a steel beam going across this house. It's all going to get lifted up evenly and put on wheels, and then basically it's towed to the museum, which I think the museum is a total of like 13 miles if you drive the fastest route.
Which we won't be taking.
Probably not. Yeah, we're going to avoid freeways, and overpasses and underpasses are always a little bit difficult, but we do have a couple we have to get across the 95 or the I-11.
Yeah.
We're on the other side, so there's going to have to be investigations on which route is going to be best to do that. And it's interesting. You look back at our chapel move, which moved from a similar area. It was right across from the Circus.
Mm-hmm.
That one was a little more difficult because it had a really tall roof. This building's not as tall. So that one could not go under an underpass. This house may be able to fit under an underpass. So that one ended up going all the way down into like Green Valley area from there, and then came across. So there was a lot of zigzagging, and it took 2 days to move it just across town. But now it sits here and is accessible to everyone.
How many houses do you have there at the museum?
Right now we have 16 historical structures, so ranging from very small motor court cabin all the way up to, a 2-story craftsman style bungalow house. So varying sizes. Our first move was the Boulder City Railroad Depot, which is this extremely long building. And I love looking at the pictures and seeing how it's just like moving down the street and all the community comes out to see it. And it was, it's this big effort to preserve our history and its community involvement.
Do you think when they lift the house up, there's a chance of discovering something under the house? We were talking about Howard Hughes. Do you think there might be something under the house?
I think there's going to be lots of things found out. Even during the feasibility study, the architect, when he came out, things we wouldn't notice because we're not architects.
Uh-huh.
He said this house was really built strangely. Even, Howard Hughes didn't have the building of it, but he may have added to it, is what some of the structures telling us that it was added to multiple times. But they changed the way they did things. The windows are slanted in, which in the 50s was a thing to have windows slanted, but most of the time they're slanted out. You want water to go out of your house, not to go
Yeah.
into your house.
Not coming, because you want the water to go, not
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is that something Howard Hughes did? Because he did have some theories about UV rays, and if you could reflect them away, that you would have better health. And so, is that something that Hughes came in and did after he moved in? We're not quite sure, but there's some really odd things. There's a hatch right by the fireplace that's made out of plywood. Why is that there?
Yeah, it doesn't go anywhere. And then isn't there a fake chimney in there as well?
Yeah, there's a fake chimney. So there's and then most of the interior walls are cinder blocks as well, even though they're not holding up any roof structures and they're not structural. So why was it made cinder block?
And there's panic buttons. Is there two panic buttons or one panic
One
button?
panic button,
There's
yeah.
one.
One
And
panic.
that was you think that was installed by Howard Hughes then back in
They
the
do
50s?
believe it was, yeah, because there's, why else would just a model home have a panic button in it?
There's random light switches too. We were trying to turn some lights on, you and I, on Wednesday, and there's like some light switch up top and some metal switch as well. I'm flicking it, not sure what's happening, but yeah, it's some randomness in that house.
Yeah, there is. And I think it goes beyond Howard Hughes. I think it goes back onto the fact that it was used by KIS for multiple reasons. I mean, you guys even used it for, COVID and isolation. And each of those little layers kind of tells the story of our community, not just about Hughes, but about how we have adapted around this tiny house. Because when you walk out, it's the same way. It's the city's adapted around it. There's these giant,
Yeah. The city
these
grew around.
mega resorts, almost to the point where my fear of moving the house is it too, do we built up too much around it? Is it going to actually physically fit?
Yeah.
Some of these
We'll
areas.
find out. Amber, I'm glad we got to do this. And unfortunately, we're running out of time here, but thank you so much for joining us. If people are watching right now and they want to support the move, support the cause, I know it's through the Clark County Museum Guild, but how can people help out and make donations?
So donations can be made through their website, which is the Clark County Museum Guild.org. They actually have a lot of resources there. They've got a blog that's telling some amazing stories about Hughes and our local history. But then there's a landing page for this project, and that's where you can find probably most updates. Contact us, get involved, whether it's a gift of your time or a gift of money. Any way the community can help, we're looking for their help.
I love it. And then we'll have you on next time to talk about what Channel 8 is going to put in the place of that house. People are talking about a pickleball court, gym.
I'm sure you guys all have your own personal requests.
We do. Yeah, I want a gym. Oh, Amber, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.